And Dean Davis, thank you. And we'll get started.
Great. Thank you very much for that introduction. And thank you all for joining me. And I know that my system is turned on. I've turned my mute off. I just want to make sure I'm not hearing anybody say I can't hear you. So I trust that everything is going well. And you can see the screen, write it effectively and elegantly, the PowerPoint that I've shared. So just want to make sure somebody give me a thumbs up or nod, or make sure that what I think I'm showing you is there. Okay, great. Thank you, Alika. Well, I'm very pleased to be doing this. Thank you for the invitation. And I love the good work that our team does in student success. And they are really passionate about supporting you guys in your success. I said you guys, I forgot this Texas, you're supposed to say y'all. Supporting y'all in your success. And I'm from Washington State, so you just say you guys instead of you all, and that's everybody. But we're proud of you, student success, proud of the work that you do for our students. And I'm very excited to be talking to you about writing today. I enjoy writing, I enjoy the work of it, and I like to talk about it. To be honest, I was a little bit intimidated to be asked to talk about it, because I thought, wow, that's you're trying to tell people to write, and I kind of selected the subject myself in terms of writing effectively and elegantly. And I thought, wow, I'm setting a fairly high bar for myself, but I think it's worth it. And the more I was putting this together, I thought this is going to be fun, and I'm glad to be doing it. So anyone that tells you that they love to write, if they're not hard workers, then they either have written a couple of things in a journal, as in their own journal, somewhere once upon a time. Writing is hard work, and good writing is very hard work. When you write, Flannery O'Connor said, "I write to discover what I know." When you write, you engage in a process of discovery, a process of exploration, and to communicate your discoveries is pretty hard work. So talking about writing effectively and elegantly, let's begin with definitions. So Merriam-Webster defines effective, says something is effective when something produces a decided, decisive, or desired effect. In other words, something that you create produces what you hoped that it would create. It accomplishes the intended outcome. Elegance, on the other hand, is defined as refined grace or dignified propriety, tasteful richness of design or ornamentation, dignified gracefulness or restrained beauty of style, scientific precision, neatness, and simplicity. My goal today is to talk about a little bit, just to scratch the surface, maybe about how we can accomplish effectiveness and elegance in our writing, because you want grades that reflect effective and elegant work. And I guarantee you that your instructors want to read effective and elegant work as opposed to ineffective and inelegant work. And as you go into your career, your ministry, or if you're in it, you continue it, you're always going to have to write. And so stronger writing skills will help you overall. So the way we're going to approach this today is I'd like to talk about 4 showstoppers. Those are not the good kind. You know, if you watch the British bakery, the Great British Baking Show, or whatever it is, my wife loves to watch that. Every episode they have to produce a showstopper cake or a showstopper bread or something, and that's supposed to be something that's impressive. I want to talk about showstoppers that actually bring the thing to a halt, and not in a good way. Then we'll talk about building the solid train. So in showstoppers, I'll give you a few of the nitpicky things that are problems for you. Then we'll talk very briefly about what you can do to construct a solid train. I'll explain that in just a moment. And then as time allows, we'll end off with some discussion. Okay, so showstopper number one that I tend to run into when I'm helping students or grading work is what I call scrambled essays and spam. Scrambled essays and spam. These are essays that you get that are all over the map. You're not really sure where it begins or where it ends. You're not even sure where the writer is wanting to go. You're not sure if the writer knows where he or she wants to go. To write effectively, one must know what one wants to accomplish. So when you sit down to compose your essay, if you don't already know what you want to say, if you haven't already decided what you want to communicate, your readers won't know it either. They will get scrambled essays and spam. That's essays that are all over the place and filled with filler. So how do you avoid that? Well, first of all, in the second half of this presentation, I'll talk about this a little bit more, but the only way to avoid that is to begin with your research by asking the question that you want to answer, the question or questions. So before you ever write your essay, you should ask your questions and then search for the answers to your questions. Once you think you have the answer to your question or answers to your questions, then you begin to construct a train. And an essay should be a train. It should have a flow of thought. And that analogy I owe to one of my professors, Dr. Graham Twelftree, renowned New Testament theologian. But he would always tell us your essay should be a train. It's not a flower. It's not a hodgepodge. It's not a potpourri. Okay, your essay should be a train. It should start off with a hook or introduction. It should have a thesis statement that is manageable, measurable, precise. It should have a method statement that is clear, simple, orderly, followed absolutely. It should have a body that is logical, orderly, interconnected, supported, tight, and elegant. And then it should have a conclusion. That conclusion should affirm and mirror the method and the thesis. Then as you construct your train, the obvious parts of your train, each portion of that train is going to be your paragraphs. And you should treat each paragraph as a miniature essay. So if your whole essay is taking you somewhere, then each paragraph should move you a little bit further along the way down the journey. Okay, so if you don't approach your essay, if you don't approach your writing already knowing what you want to say, then you will produce scrambled essays and spam, and you will get back essays with comments like, I'm not really sure where you're going. I really can't follow your train of thought. I'm not getting what you're trying to say. Okay. The second showstopper that we see often is our timid sentiments and glittering generalities. They show up when you read sentences like this. I feel like this is a really good book because a lot of people could be helped by it. Okay, so what do you think about it? I'm not really sure what you're thinking. I find this kind of writing showing up a lot in students that are inexperienced, and it's writing that uses a lot of feeling language. Okay, it's I feel this, or it's very subjective language. I think that it could be this, or I believe such and such. And what I call that sentimental talk. Now, the thing about sentimental talk is that sentimental talk often indicates that the writer is lost or has not thought much about the subject. So when somebody doesn't know what to say, they retreat into feeling talk. Well, you know, this made me feel uncomfortable. I believe it has problems. They'll jump to things that they'll jump to push button hot topics, or kind of what preachers will do when preachers know they want to shout or they want to get everybody say amen. If they start feeling a little mushy, they'll just say, so, you know, but Jesus is coming back, hallelujah. And you get that kind of thing in essays when people are like, well, I believe this book is really helpful because, everybody needs to know that Jesus saves and can get them out of any problem that they're in. Okay, right. Well, that doesn't get us anywhere, and I'm not sure you know what you're wanting to say. Sentimental talk, on the other hand, can also be a way of expressing someone's evaluation or trying to express someone's thought while evading meaningful dialogue and criticism. I think that this book, I kind of feel like it's not really helpful. Well, when someone is afraid of pushback, when they're afraid of someone criticizing, or when they are afraid of someone arguing back, then they will retreat to feeling talk, because how can you argue with feelings? How can you criticize feelings? You can't, right? Well, this book made me very angry. Okay, well, no one can argue with the fact that you're angry. You say you're angry, okay, but you still haven't articulated what made you angry, okay? Saying I feel like sometimes is a way of just trying to soften it so that we don't offend someone or we don't hurt someone's feelings. And we're putting out timid sentiments instead of just standing up and making our case. I like to tell students to think of the analogy of the trial lawyer, because sentimental talk and glittering generalities are when someone just takes a large description and plasters it over everything. Well, this is a really good book that a lot of people will like, and then moves on. Why is it a good book? Who will like it? A lot of people will. Okay, who's the lot that you're talking about? Will Christians like it? Will Muslims like it? Will atheists like it? What kinds of Christians will like it? Will spirit-filled Christians like it? Will cessationist Christians like it? Will, high church people? See, be specific. All right. Sentimental talk and glittering generalities ultimately are unconvincing. And like I said, I like to use the analogy of the trial lawyer when I'm trying to help students with writing. Compare these two sentences, and which would you like to hear your lawyer say if you were on trial for murder? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I feel like you should vote not guilty because my client would not do such a thing. I know a lot of murderers, and I don't think she is one. At that point in time, I would be asking for the judge to recess so that I could be choosing a different attorney. Rather, I would want to hear this. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client is innocent of the charge of murder because he was not in the location of the crime at the time of the crime. I will demonstrate this to you through the testimony of eyewitnesses, credit card receipts, and airline tickets. You see the difference? The first one is timid, it's subjective, it talks about feelings, and essentially the jury doesn't care what the attorney feels like. The jury cares about what the attorney can demonstrate. Same thing when you're writing your work. Your professors don't care so much about what you feel like. What they care about is the argument that you're making and can you demonstrate the work. Okay, showstopper number 3 are what I call cloud castles. Cloud castles. Cloud castles are statements made without foundation or adequate support. Like clouds, they are temporary, lack substance, and are quickly blown away. Social media is full of cloud castles. Unfortunately, it has been carried into essay writing and promulgated by folks who really should know better. Okay, cloud castles are assessments that are gone with the wind. Such and such theologian, really. This is when you see somebody say something like, theologian A doesn't even like these kinds of people. What are you basing that on? how do you know that? Can you demonstrate that? Or, this doctrine is contrary to all of Scripture, and then moving on without supporting that at all. Okay, what are you basing that on? This book is heretical. No one should ever read it. Moving on. Okay, what are you basing that assessment on? What is that judgment based upon? Okay. Now, I find that cloud castles are often built from one of two reasons. The first of those, unfortunately, is just laziness. Now, when someone builds a cloud castle out of laziness, there's usually not malicious or diabolical intent involved. Instead, someone is just trying to get through an assignment quickly. They're not taking the time. They're throwing out claims and assessments without support. It's a lack of rigor on the part of the writer. And they're assuming that the readers are going to agree with everything they've said and won't challenge anything they've said, and so it's not worth supporting. Well, there's a problem with that, in that if you are wanting to make an argument, then your readers deserve the support. Your readers deserve to be treated intelligently. Your readers deserve to be treated like critical readers and deserve your best effort. If you want them to read with their best effort, you should write with your best effort. WritingCommons.org gives a couple of examples. Here is, for example, from them, an unsupported opinion. I believe that the current anti-bullying campaigns aimed at today's adolescents are useless and will only create a future society that is full of wimps. Well, the good news is we know exactly how you feel about it, and we know exactly what you think. The bad news is you haven't convinced anyone, because you haven't brought any evidence to the discussion. You haven't brought any support to your claim. All you've done is tell us how you feel about it, which that's fine. But if you're trying to convince people or persuade people, if you're trying to get people to go along with you, you're not going to get very far. Here is an example of taking that same sentiment and bringing support to it. Now, you may disagree with this opinion. That's irrelevant. I'm just using this as an example of a supported versus an unsupported opinion. So that was an unsupported opinion. Contrast that with this supported opinion. Anti-bullying campaigns targeting today's adolescents may create a future society that is unprepared to cope with conflict. In support of this idea, noted psychologist Peter Smith explains that while reports of bullying decrease with age, the frequency of bullying remains the same across different age groups. He attributes this decline in reported bullying incidents to the fact that older victims have developed valuable coping mechanisms to help with bullying. Smith, page 336. Smith's idea suggests that bullying may not always be detrimental to the victim, since building coping skills during adolescence may contribute to greater resiliency in adulthood. So do you see the difference? One of them says, well, I'm telling you, anti-bullying campaigns doesn't help anybody get better. The second example says, Dr. Smith has done some research, and his research supports that his research supports that all of the emphasis on anti-bullying may actually not help people develop coping mechanisms. See the difference? Here on the second one, you have a claim that is supported with evidence. Now, someone may mount a lot of other evidence from the other side. They may argue with it. And at the end of the day, that argument may lose, but at least it's an argument with some evidence. Now, the second reason for cloud castles is a little more malicious. It's a little more devious. And it has to do with what we might call Humpty Dumpty or labeling, all right? When someone labels something, they do so in order to try to strengthen their unsupported claim by labeling the opposition in order to attach them with something that is broadly reviled. So, for example, you can just simply say something is racist, okay? Or you can say something is anti-God. Well, Okay, if you don't support that, all you've done is labeled it. And you may win people because nobody wants to be anti-God, at least in this context, and nobody wants to be racist. So you may bully people into going along with you, but at the end of the day, you really haven't convinced people of the argument. And that means another bully could persuade them another direction. There's another, give me just a moment, because I'm getting, my AirPods are telling me that the battery is low. So give me just a moment, and I'm going to switch my microphone and speaker. Okay, can you still hear me? Good. So the second example of what comes about, or the other form, I told you labeling, the other form is what we call Humpty Dumptying, which is a funny term for what is actually talked about by philosophers and logicians who study rhetoric and argumentation. Humpty Dumptying, this term comes from a passage in Alice Through the Looking Glass, where Alice talks to Humpty Dumpty, and Humpty Dumpty says something to Alice about glory. And Alice says, well, basically says, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that term glory. That's not how I've understood it. Glory means this. And Humpty Dumpty responds with this phrase, with this. When I use a word, Humpty Dumpty said in rather a scornful tone, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is, said Alice, whether you can make words mean different things. The question is, said Humpty Dumpty, which is to be master, that's all. Humpty Dumpty basically is when you take a word and you empty its contents and you stuff it full of something else so that you can attach it to other labels and try to convince people along. It's deceptive, it's devious, it might win some people, but it's not honest argumentation and it fails logic. And good instructors will spot it and call it. And you see this everywhere. I saw it today. Of all things, I wasn't looking for an example, and an example popped out. So, as you know, we had another Supreme Court justice confirmed last night, and so in response, one senator on Senator Markey on Twitter tweets this out. As you know, originalism is a way of interpreting law. Senator Markey tweets this out. Originalism is racist. Originalism is sexist. Originalism is homophobic. Originalism is just a fancy word for discrimination. Okay, after hearing that statement, who would want to say they adhere to originalism? No one. Yet let's take a look at it. Is originalism racist? Is it sexist? Is it homophobic? Is it just a fancy word for discrimination? No. When you look up the definition, that's not at all what originalism means. Originalism has to do with how you interpret law according to intent. Now, you may disagree with the legal philosophy, completely justified, but don't give it a different meaning just so you can label it. Same thing in your work. If you disagree with someone's conclusions or you disagree with something that you're reading, don't empty it out of meaning and stuff it full with something else so that you can stick an ugly label on it. It's dishonest and you should be called out. Okay, showstopper number 4. Tautologies of circumlocutory redundancies of grandiloquent verbosity. I think you know where I'm going with this. These are essays that we read that students are really trying very, very, very hard to impress their instructor. A lot of times it's because students are pretty well convinced that maybe they don't belong there, or maybe they need to sound like the stuff that they're reading, and they try to sound bigger. And they try to make their ideas sound bigger.
Shakespeare's character Macbeth gave us a phrase. He's actually talking about life, but it really sounds to me like a lot of essays. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Now, I don't think you're idiots, but when you read things, it tells me what you think of yourself, because you try to use large words, you try to stuff them full of things, and you go around and around and around. This problem arises when a student goes around and around the subject and tries to impress their reader with their vocabulary or their complicated sentences. It's done with extra words and circumlocution. Here's the thing: befuddled writers make befuddled readers. Say what you mean. Sometimes students give us these, grandiloquent, verbose, circumlocucious paragraphs and essays because they're not really sure what they want to say. So they figure, if I can toss it full of technical sounding jargon, I will sound like I know what I'm doing and I'll squeak by. It's not really true. It shows up, okay? Just say what you mean. Just say what you want to say. And if you're not impressed by what you want to say, that's okay. Say what you're confident in. Say what you know, okay? Whether or not you're impressed, say what you know. Say what you found and support it. Don't expect your reader to do your work for you. If you're not clear what you want to say, and yet you give us an essay, what you're hoping is that your reader will figure out what you want to say for you. When you finished your essay, ask yourself, can I read it? Can my friend read it? Can my mother read it? Can my grandmother read it? Okay. Ask yourself those questions. Secondly, your instructor is not amused. They're not amused. Using larger works or larger words, trying to use academic words, trying to use impressive language, sometimes misusing it because you're not really sure what you're saying, doesn't impress your instructor, okay? I would much rather read a student who describes a concept in clear, concise language that I can then say, hey, what you're referring to is what we call ontological argumentation, okay? That sounds fancy. I would much rather tell someone, you've got the concept, here's the word that goes with it, than to have someone use words and language that they're not even really sure what it means. Does that make sense? And I think your instructors are going to be the same. They're going to feel the same. They're going to be more impressed with the fact that you are clear, you're solid, you're confident, you're grounded, and then they can help you as needed. Along with this, all of these redundancies and grandiloquence, ask yourself the question, do I really need that modifier? Do I really need to say, this is a really good exposition of a very important passage in Paul, who was an extraordinary theologian? Sometimes I'll have students who tell me that they have a very difficult time getting down to a maximum word count. Maybe your essay is 2,500 words or 1,000 words or 750 or 500. They'll say, I have a really difficult time getting down to that level. Well, how many times did you use the word really, or very, or excellent, or awesome, or good, or wow? Okay, look for all of that kind. Typically, you can strike most modifiers. You can, if it's an exposition, you don't have to tell us how, exciting it was. Just tell us this is an exposition. You especially don't need to tell us that a theory or a psychological a therapy technique is really impressive if you're about to show us how with the evidence, okay? So eliminate useless modifiers, right? All right, so that's a lot of the, those are the 4 showstoppers. Very briefly, what can we do to build the train, so to speak. How can we build a solid train? If an essay is like a train, how can we build a solid train that is effective and elegant? First of all, pay attention to your design. Design your train. Narrow your question. Conduct your research trying to answer your question that you're proposing. Once you've answered the question, then you can devise your thesis statement. And I believe that Dr. Brewer in another occasion has talked about constructing arguments. And Alika, is that available? Is that an on-demand? Yes. So look up Dr. Brewer's presentation on constructing arguments, because that will be very helpful to you as you think about how you should devise your thesis statement. Okay. Then organize your essay and your research to argue that thesis statement. So design. Before you ever begin writing, design what you want to do. Okay? However you want to do that, whether you want to get some graph paper and sketch it out, or you do it on your computer, or maybe a blank piece of paper, or a whiteboard, or maybe you want to lay out a big old one of these big giant post-it boards, and draw on it. Whatever you need to do, once you have answered your question with your research, design your essay. How am I going to get the answer across to my readers? Okay. Once you've designed, then you begin to write. Okay. And when you write, stick to your plan. Stick religiously to your plan. Don't veer off. Don't wander here, there, and everywhere. Stick to your plan. If you do need to change your plan, and that does happen occasionally, if you do need to change your plan intentionally. Don't wander off. Stop and say, wait a minute. I think maybe I could accomplish this more effectively, or it might even be a more direct line if I change that. That's okay. That will happen. If you do, take the moment, stop, look at your outline, change your outline up so that when you keep going, you're still going according to plan. Okay. So your plan is changeable, but you will find yourself much more effective if you intentionally change your plan instead of being tossed here and there. Obviously, as you go, include your research. Now, there's a couple of things you could do. One of the things, if you don't have a strong footnoting system, or however it is that your style demands it, I would recommend, as you include your research, that you find a shorthand way of doing that. What I will do sometimes, if I'm really in a vigorous flow and I don't want to break, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you're slogging through, sometimes you feel like it's just coming, and I don't want to break that up by pulling it up or looking these things. Sometimes I may even know I may know C.S. Lewis said this statement somewhere. What I'll do in a situation like that is I may just do all caps, or I'll just include my research. Or if I have my notes there, I'll include the research, and then I'll just put in parentheses something like, find this in Lewis, or, here it is, Young, page 33, and I'll just move on. Now, when I go back, I know that I'm going to need to clean that up, but just by popping it out there real fast, I'm able to keep going without breaking the flow. Because, hey, once that flow gets to going, you want to keep it rolling as long as you can, because there's an energy momentum there. Ride that, because there will be plenty of times that you're facing number 4, the tough patches. The best way to get through tough patches is to write through them. There are days that writing well is the art of applying the seat to the chair and just pushing through. Okay. Get through it. Why? Why can you just push through it? How do you do that? Well, you can do that because you understand this. None of us is such a prodigy from heaven that our first draft is the golden draft. All of us will have to revise. So you are free to put garbage on the paper when you're stuck. Go ahead, put mush out there, put garbage on there. Go ahead, do it. Trash it up. Throw stupid stuff on your paper. Get it out there, because when you have finished that, you're going to go back over and you're going to revise. And then once you've revised it, you probably should revise it again. And then it wouldn't hurt to do a bit more. And then it might not be a bad idea to go ahead and revise it again. Okay, revise, revise, revise. So when you're in a tough patch with writing, it's okay to put garbage out there. And if you feel like, man, this is stupid, this is garbage, just shut up, just put it out there. Because you are going to give yourself permission to do that, because you're going to go back and clean it up later. Okay. And by the way, I'll find that often, this is the truth, I think that I'm putting garbage out there, and then when I go back to revise later, I was, that wasn't nearly so bad at all. Actually, that was much better than I thought. Clean this up here, clean that up there, but it's actually pretty strong. Sometimes you're doing a lot better than you think you are. So when you revise, here's a few things. This isn't everything, but here's some top things that I would say look for when you revise. Number one, ruthlessly eliminate unnecessary words, sentences, and paragraphs. When you're reading through it, say, do I really have to say that word? Do I really need that sentence? Do I really need that paragraph? Am I repeating myself? Did I just say that 2 sentences ago? And that will happen, because that's part of the writing process. As you're putting your words out there unrefined, you will find yourself looping around and repeating yourself. That's okay. That's why you revise. You go back and say, wow, I said that 3 times in this paragraph. Strike, strike. And you get rid of a bunch of stuff. Okay. I never worry when my rough draft goes over the word limit, because I know I have a lot to get rid of. I know I have a lot of junk in there that needs to be cleaned up. Number 2, make sure everything sticks to the point. Don't do rabbit trails. Sometimes students like to get instructors down a rabbit trail in their lectures. The thing is, nobody wants to read a rabbit trail. Okay, stay away from those. Third, make it clear. Always strive for clarity. Try to be clear rather than impressive. Be elegant rather than fancy. Okay. Be precise rather than gaudy. If a statement can be taken 2 ways, make sure it's only one. If you're not sure what you said, you can be certain that your reader won't be sure what you said. Number 4, choose concrete nouns and engaging verbs. Choose concrete nouns and engaging verbs. Okay. So C.S. Lewis said, say more people are dying, rather than say mortality rose. Okay. Mortality is an abstract. Rose is, actually kind of goes against this idea of dying. More people are dying deals with concrete people, okay? And it deals with a specific engaging verb, right? Mortality rose is a sleeper statement. More people are dying catches your attention, engages your attention. Check your grammar. Check your grammar. Sometimes students are not aware that their grammar distracts their readers from what they want to say. There are times that I find myself writing here, I think you have something important to say, but I'm not sure what you're saying. I'm getting distracted by the poor grammar, and it's obscuring what you want to say. So check your grammar. And if you know that you struggle with it, get a program, Grammarly or something. Use the Student Success Center, find a friend, pay a friend, do something for someone that can help you edit and clean up your work. Check your mechanics. That's things like punctuation, capitalizations, all of those kinds of things. And third, check your citation style. Make sure that your paper is formatted the way that it's required. If it's APA, make sure it's APA. If it's Turabian, make sure it's Turabian. Whatever it is, make sure that it's in the proper format. That signals to everybody, you know what you're doing, okay? All right, well, that's my 2 cents worth on writing effectively and elegantly. That is writing to achieve a purpose and writing with precision and with style and simplicity and refrained beauty and grace. And I'm not sure, Alika, how much time we have left, but as much time as we have left, I am happy to open the tables up for dialogue, question and answer, and anything anybody might wonder.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Yes, so we still have time. If you guys in person have questions, or if you have any questions online, feel free to submit it in. And we have a little bit of time, so just let us know if you have any questions about anything.
Dr. Davis?
Yes.
Hi, you talked about the essay train up in front with the elements of a hook or introduction, thesis statement, a method statement, a body and conclusion. Could you just elaborate a little bit more what a hook or introduction would look like? And then the thesis statement, should that be long or short? And your method statement, just to bring clarity to what you need?
Absolutely, happy to. I can't see you, unfortunately. So who am I talking to?
My name is David.
All right, nice to hear from you. Okay, good question. So your hook or introduction, this is something that you want to do to engage your readers, invite your readers to join with you. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be a lot. Depending on the length of the essay you have, it might be a very short story that you can put into 2 or 3 sentences. I mean, you can tell a story that shortly. Or it might be a shocking statistic. Sometimes that's always whoa, what in the world? It's just a way of hooking the reader. If you'll notice, and I'm going to go back to more of what you asked about, but if you'll notice in this process, when I said write, notice I didn't mention anything about the engagement, all of that in the writing, because a lot of times I think that people get stuck trying to come up with something snappy, and so they can't get out of the gate, okay? Just put what if you've done your research, you know what you want to say, and you just need to figure out how you're going to say it and then put it out there. Don't worry about being snappy. Don't worry about it being engaging, okay? That's what you get to do with your revising, right? You can come back on your revising. But so the hook and introduction, it should just get something that makes your reader want to read it. And you know that. You know when you see a journal article that puts you to sleep versus one that snags your attention and makes you want to see more of what that person has to say. As I'm saying that, examples are escaping my mind. Anyway, you want to hook your reader. The thesis statement, your thesis statement needs to be a single sentence, okay? And it should be an argument, okay? Your thesis statement should argue a case, and it should say, basically, it should have your conclusion based upon a premise, okay? So, you could say Trinitarian theology has a long history, or Trinitarian theology is the traditional, Trinitarian theology is the traditional doctrine of the church because it was hammered out and held to from the beginning, all right? You're not going to be making any earth-shattering, profound arguments necessarily. This is still, maybe it's a research paper where you're just learning about it, but you have a premise. Your premise is that that is the traditional doctrine, and you're going to show that because of the way that you're going to show that by the fact that it has been held to throughout the history of the church. So your thesis statement should be a single sentence, identifiable, and makes the argument for your essay.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, would you have any examples of how to use on a sentence you mentioned here, use concrete nouns and engaging verbs?
Sure.
Would you have any example to give it to us?
Sure. If you give me just a minute, let me pull that up. I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. So I'm going to read to you from a short article by someone named Helen Sword, who has written on stylish academic writing. And I wish everyone would listen to her, because she's asking people, even academics, to be more engaging, and she uses examples of people who do. So this is one of the things that she talks about being concrete. So let me just read to you a short bit from her. Yes, her name is Helen Sword, like two-edged sword, Helen Sword. So she says, be concrete. Academics typically traffic in abstract language. Readers, however, grasp abstract concepts best when they are grounded in the physical world. Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech vividly illustrates this principle. She says, she quotes him, "I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood." King invokes a colorful landscape, the red hills of Georgia, stocks it with human characters, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners, and gives those people something to do, sit down together at the table. Not until the end of the sentence does he deliver the abstract noun at its heart. Brotherhood, King shows us, is not just an empty ideal, but a place, an action, a shared meal. Okay, so thank you for popping that in the chat, Alika. Yes, a text like that can be very, very helpful. So using concrete nouns is when you want to illustrate the abstract using real life things that people can grab hold of. So because King could have stood up there and said, we all need to push forward to the ideals of brotherhood and the ideals of sisterhood. And we all need to push forward so that we are treating everyone equitably and fairly and loving one another. Okay, great. But when he says, I have a dream about the red hills of Georgia, the sons of slave owners, the sons of slaves sitting at table together in brotherhood. Now you know exactly what he means when he says brotherhood. Okay, so that's the abstracts. The concrete helps us to understand and define abstracts. He does it again in that same speech when he says, I have a dream that my children will not be judged by the color of their skin. Okay, concrete, skin, talking about their color. We all get that. We know exactly what's happening, but by the content of their character. Okay. He shifts to the abstract, right? He uses that concrete to shift us over to that abstract. It's more engaging. It also, when you are able to give concrete examples of what you are saying, it demonstrates that you have a grasp on what you're trying to say. You're not just grabbing, words that you've read in the literature and tossing it into your paper.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. Very, very good question. Someone else?
I had a question, Dr. Davis.
Yes.
So I was wondering, were there any other books or just articles that you would recommend to develop our style in our writing, like more fluidly?
You know, I think honestly, what I would do a couple of things here. I would just Google. You can get some tips on that. I don't know that you have time to digest entire books, so look for short articles that can help you. Pay attention to websites like the Purdue OWL, OWL. It's an online writing center. That can be very helpful. It seems to grow ever more. For years, I've been teaching and referring people to the OWL, and it seems like every year it's just, there is more stuff about it. It's about style, it's about verb, it's all the technical language, as well as just simple helps in just writing and getting more fluid. The other thing I would do is I would read good work. Read good work a lot. I know that you're limited in what you can do, but I think you will find it more helpful to read short articles about writing and then spend your time reading well-written material. Because how do children learn to speak? Children learn to speak by hanging around adult speakers and picking up the language. You learn to write well by reading well-written material. And C.S. Lewis will say, read for thinking about how it will sound. Okay. You might try as an exercise. I know you were asking for material, but as an exercise, you might try reading your work out loud. Because if you read it out loud and it's not smooth reading it out loud, it won't be smooth reading it on the page either. Sometimes reading it out loud, you spot huge glaring issues. You say, wow, that sentence doesn't even make sense. But glancing through it, you thought that it did because you saw the words you wanted to put in there. But then when you read it, you thought, oh my goodness, I don't even know how I put that on the page. And I'm not just talking about student work there. I'm talking about my own. I'll read that and say, whoa, Davis, what, did you have a seizure mid-sentence or something? I mean, what is that? So really, Selena, there's a very good question. I would say read well-written work.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And it can be hard to find well-written work sometimes. Usually textbooks are not the best well-written things. Now, sometimes they are if you're reading good, engaging assignments, but like a psychology textbook or even a New Testament survey textbook, it's just kind of getting the flat information out there, and it's not always the most engaging. But find well.
I feel like I've been drawn to philosophical books just because I enjoy like having to really try to understand what they're saying, but I'm not sure if it's actually helping me with my writing because I don't want to write like them, obviously, because I understand what they're saying. But yeah. I don't know. I've been drawn to that lately. So
they are masters in fogging it up, and so they will just. It's like you read them and you think, wow,
it's like a mystery. I love it.
Well, I'm good for you. I remember reading in my theological studies, I read one work, I shall remain nameless, and I read a sentence over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I actually was going to bring it out to you, and I realized I left the book at home. And I finally got frustrated and flung the book across the room because I don't even know what you're trying to say. He could have used more examples, concrete language.
But it's like when you figure out what they're saying, it's like you've I don't know, it's like you've reached gold or something. That's how I feel about it, but
Sure.
that's just
Well,
me.
look for, as far as your writing, read those people whose writing engages you. Yeah, and there are
So
some
what,
philosophers that will do that.
because I love C.S. Lewis, but I'm not the biggest fan of the like I love more of like his Mere Christianity and like thoughts like that more than like his other style. So is there like another book of his that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at Problem of Pain. You can look at The Four Loves. Those are a couple of good starts for
Thank you.
that. Good questions.